Some people fall apart when a marriage ends. They cry in parking lots. They argue over furniture. They beg lawyers to fight battles that were already lost before the papers were printed. Ariel Monroe did none of that. On the morning her husband slid the divorce packet across the marble kitchen island, the city of Atlanta was waking up under a pale, indifferent sun. Traffic hummed along Peachtree Street. Planes lifted quietly from Hartsfield-Jackson in steady succession. Life moved forward without noticing that a marriage was being formally erased. Marcus Holloway stood on the opposite side of the island, sleeves rolled to the elbow, watch glinting under recessed lights. He had chosen the setting carefully. Their house, his house now, according to the paperwork, was staged like a showroom. Everything clean, everything controlled, nothing emotional. Ariel stood barefoot on the cool tile, holding a mug she hadn't realized had gone cold. Steam no longer rose from it. She didn't sit. She didn't brace herself against the counter. She didn't even look down at the papers immediately. Marcus watched her closely. He had rehearsed this moment in his head more times than he would ever admit. He expected anger, shock, a sharp intake of breath, maybe tears he could pretend not to notice. He expected bargaining, or silence that trembled. What he got was stillness, the kind that made the room feel smaller. "These are straightforward," Marcus said, breaking the quiet before it could start asking questions. "Clean break. No drawn-out nonsense." Ariel nodded once. Not agreement. Acknowledgement. He mistook it for resignation. The attorneys were clear. He continued, tapping the corner of the stack. "Everything's already structured. The properties, the accounts, the aviation assets. You'll keep your personal items and the car you came in with." She finally looked down at the papers. Marcus leaned back slightly, satisfied. He had expected her to flip pages, to ask about numbers, to point out unfair lines. Instead, she skimmed the first paragraph, eyes moving calmly, like someone reading directions they already knew by heart. "You don't have representation," Marcus added, just a touch of condescension slipping through. "That's your choice, of course, but my lawyer will file this today." Ariel took a slow sip from the mug, as if the temperature no longer mattered. She set it down gently, the ceramic barely making a sound against stone. "I know," she said. Her voice was even. No cracks. No tightness. Marcus felt something flicker in his chest. Annoyance, maybe. He preferred reactions. They made him feel large. "You should read it carefully," he said. "This affects the rest of your life." She turned another page. The silence stretched. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past. Somewhere in the house, the HVAC system kicked on with a low sigh. Marcus checked his watch without meaning to. He had a call in 30 minutes. A zoning discussion. Important people. Real power. "Ariel," he said, sharper now. "You understand that this is final." She nodded again. "Yes." That was it. No protest. No questions. Marcus exhaled, a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. This was easier than expected. He had spent weeks preparing himself to be the villain in her story. Turns out, she wasn't even writing one. He slid the pen across the island toward her. She picked it up. Didn't hesitate. Didn't ask for time. She turned to the signature page, as if everything before it was already settled history. Marcus felt a strange urge to say something else. To remind her of what she was giving up. To reclaim control of the moment. "You're walking away from a lot," he said. "You know that, right?" Ariel paused, pen hovering. For the first time, she looked directly at him. Not pleading. Not angry. Measuring. "I'm walking away from you," she said calmly. "That's the point." The pen scratched across the paper. Her name appeared clean and precise at the bottom of the page. She capped the pen and set it down. Marcus stared at the signature. It was done. Just like that. No fight. No mess. No spectacle. He should have felt victorious. Instead, something in his stomach tightened. "You'll need to be out by the end of the week," he said, defaulting to logistics. "I'll have my assistant coordinate access times, so there's no overlap." "Okay. That car is still registered under the old policy." I'll cancel it Friday. Understood. She gathered nothing. No folder. No documents. No personal effects. Just her phone and the quiet presence she'd carried into the room. As she walked past him toward the hallway, Marcus couldn't help himself. You're taking this surprisingly well, he said, forcing a half smile. Most people don't. She stopped near the doorway. Didn't turn around. Most people talk too much when they're scared, she replied. I'm not scared. Then she left. The front door closed with a soft, final click. Marcus stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by polished surfaces and expensive calm. He told himself this was good. Clean. Efficient. Exactly how it should be. Still, he found himself staring at the empty space where she'd been standing. That silence lingered longer than it should have. 3 months later, Marcus Holloway stood on a sun-baked stretch of land outside Scottsdale, Arizona, shielding his eyes as the desert glare bounced off fresh steel beams. This was the future. The Holloway Air Park expansion project, Phase 1, was supposed to redefine private aviation in the Southwest. A discreet, ultra-secure landing zone for high-net-worth clients who didn't want to deal with crowded terminals or government delays. Direct access. Total control. Marcus thrived on control. The main hangar frame already cut a sharp silhouette against the sky. Survey flags fluttered along the perimeter. Heavy machinery idled nearby, waiting for the next command. North Sector still isn't cleared, his operations manager, Devin Carter, said carefully, holding a tablet. We've got the south and east locked down, but without that strip, larger jets won't be able to land. Marcus frowned. I bought that land, he said. I made offers months ago. You made offers, Devin corrected. Someone else closed. Marcus turned slowly. Who? Devin swallowed. Shell Company. LLC registered out of Delaware. Silent Ridge Holdings. Marcus scoffed. Never heard of them. They bought through intermediaries. Cash transaction. Marcus laughed, short and sharp. Cash doesn't scare me. He took the tablet, scanning the ownership map. The northern parcel cut into his development like a missing tooth. Without it, the runway extension couldn't support long-range private jets. Without that, the entire project lost its edge. Set up a meeting, Marcus said. I'll buy them out. We tried, Devin said quietly. They declined. Marcus stopped walking. Declined. That's not how this works, he said. Everyone has a number. They didn't give one. Marcus handed the tablet back, jaw tightening. Then they want attention. He glanced toward the horizon, imagining jets lining up, clients shaking hands. His name etched into the future of private aviation. No one was going to block that. Not some faceless LLC. The first time Marcus realized something was wrong wasn't when the permits stalled. It wasn't when suppliers delayed shipments or inspectors suddenly became meticulous. It was the sound. A deep, unfamiliar vibration rolling across the desert. Marcus stepped out of his temporary side office, annoyance already forming on his tongue. What is that? He demanded. Devin looked up, eyes narrowing. The sound grew louder. Heavier. Controlled. Marcus recognized it instinctively. Rolls-Royce engines. He followed Devin toward the northern boundary, boots crunching over gravel. Then he saw it. A temporary runway, clean, precise, professionally laid, cut straight across land he'd assumed was idle. Security vehicles flanked the strip. Men in dark suits stood spaced with military precision. And descending from the sky, smooth and deliberate, was a private jet. Not just any jet. A long-range, ultra-luxury aircraft, painted in a muted, understated finish that screamed money without begging for attention. The jet touched down effortlessly. Marcus's mouth went dry. That's landing on my approach path, he said. Devin stared, speechless. The aircraft rolled to a controlled stop. The stairs lowered. Marcus took a step forward, then another, fury simmering just beneath the surface. This is my land, he muttered. Someone's about to learn that. The door opened. A woman appeared at the top of the stairs. Tailored jacket. Dark sunglasses. Movements unhurried. Marcus squinted. The desert sun shifted. Recognition hit him like a physical blow. Ariel. She descended the steps without looking at him. Her heels touched the ground of the northern sector, his missing piece. She removed her sunglasses. Her gaze lifted, met his, and for the first time since the divorce, Ariel Monroe smiled. Not wide, not cruel, just enough. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. The silence she'd left him with months ago had followed him here, and now it had landed, right on his territory. Ariel didn't walk toward him like someone returning to beg. She walked like someone arriving to inspect what already belonged to her. The desert heat rippled between them, bending the horizon into a wavering mirage. Behind her, the jet sat low and sleek on the temporary strip like it had always been meant to be there, like the land itself had been waiting for its weight. The air still smelled faintly of hot sand and engine exhaust, a clean, expensive scent that Marcus suddenly hated because it didn't belong to him. Marcus forced his face into something that looked like control. He took 2 steps forward, stopping at the edge of the flagged boundary line as if the painted stakes could still protect his ego. "What the hell is this?" he said, loud enough for the men in suits to hear. He needed witnesses. He needed the world to confirm he still had gravity. Ariel tilted her head slightly, calm as water. "This," she said, gesturing lightly with one hand, "is a landing. It's a landing on my approach path," Marcus snapped. "On my development corridor." Ariel's eyes moved from him to the steel skeleton of his hangar frame in the distance. The unfinished beams looked proud from far away. Up close, they looked like ambition held together by loans. "You're building big," she said. Marcus caught the tone, neutral, almost polite, and somehow that made it worse than insult. He wanted her to sound bitter. He wanted to hear the crack in her voice that proved he'd taken something from her. Instead, she sounded like she was reviewing a project she might fund or deny. "Whose jet is that?" Marcus demanded, pointing at the aircraft as if naming it would reduce it to a toy. "Who are you with?" Behind him, Devon shifted, uncomfortable. The security men didn't move at all. Ariel took a slow step closer. Her heels pressed into the compacted dirt like punctuation. "I'm not with anyone," she said. Marcus laughed, sharp and hollow. "Come on. 3 months ago, you were signing papers like you didn't even understand what you were losing. Now you're landing a jet on a military-grade strip in the middle of the Arizona desert." He leaned in, lowering his voice like he was offering her dignity in private. "You're dating somebody rich," he said. "That's fine. Just don't confuse his money with your leverage." Ariel's mouth didn't move for a moment. She stared at him like he'd just confessed something embarrassing about himself without realizing it. Then she smiled again, small, controlled, almost gentle. "Marcus," she said, "you've always needed the world to be smaller than you." He stiffened. "That jet is mine," she continued, voice calm. "Paid for." Marcus's face twitched. "With what?" Ariel didn't answer immediately. She turned her head slightly and looked down the strip at the men stationed along the perimeter. One of them touched an earpiece, scanning the horizon. A second glanced toward a black SUV parked near the runway lights. Everything about this setup said preparation. Everything about Marcus's project said panic masked as confidence. "You remember how you used to ask me why I never wanted anything?" Ariel asked. Marcus blinked, thrown off. "You'd buy something expensive just to leave it in a room," she continued, tone casual, as if they were discussing old habits over coffee. "A watch. A painting. A car you drove twice." Marcus's jaw tightened. "What does that have to do with?" "You always assumed I didn't want things because I didn't know how to have them," Ariel said. "That was your favorite story." Marcus stared at her, heat rising under his collar. Ariel lifted her chin slightly. "I didn't want your things," she said, "because they were never yours." For a moment, even the wind seemed to hesitate. Marcus's throat went dry. "What are you talking about?" Ariel reached into her bag, not a clutch like Atlanta, but something slimmer, more purposeful, and pulled out a single folded document. No thick stack. No theatrics. Just one page. She held it loosely, like it weighed nothing. This parcel, she said, nodding toward the ground beneath their feet, was purchased under Silent Ridge Holdings. 3 weeks ago. Marcus's eyes narrowed. That's the shell company. Yes, Ariel said. It is. Devin inhaled sharply behind Marcus, like he could finally see the shape of the problem. Marcus took a step forward as if he could physically crowd the truth backward. You don't own Silent Ridge, he said. Ariel's gaze didn't flicker. I do, she said. Marcus laughed again, louder, because his brain needed noise to drown out the sound of losing. You signed the divorce, he said. You left with nothing. My attorneys made sure you left with nothing. I left with nothing of yours, Ariel corrected. The words were soft. They hit like concrete. Marcus's nostrils flared. Ariel, you were a nonprofit program manager when I met you. You drove a 10-year-old Accord. You shopped like you were allergic to attention. You can't just. I was quiet, Ariel said. That's different from being poor. Marcus froze. Ariel stepped closer, lowering her voice, not for secrecy, but because she didn't need volume to dominate. My grandfather's name was Everett Monroe, she said. Marcus's eyes flickered. So, Ariel watched him carefully, waiting for the recognition to arrive. When it didn't, her expression barely changed, but something in her eyes sharpened. He wasn't just Everett Monroe, she said. That was the name people saw on holiday cards. That was the name on church donation plaques. Marcus frowned, the desert sun reflecting off his watch face like a nervous blink. Ariel's voice stayed calm. He was Everett Monroe who owned half the freight corridors that keep this country moving, she said. Rail, shipping, warehousing, private logistics, quiet infrastructure. Devin's face drained a shade lighter. No way, he whispered. Marcus's jaw clenched, refusing to accept what his instincts were already doing the math on. That's not possible, Marcus snapped. If that was true, everybody would know. Everybody knows the loud people, Ariel said, not the ones who own the roads under them. Then she unfolded the paper and held it between them, not offering it like a plea, but showing it like evidence in court. It's a trust, she said. Irrevocable. With a clause. Marcus stared at the printed text. The kind of text that didn't care about charisma or intimidation. The kind that made reality non-negotiable. My access to the principal was locked until I turned 30, Ariel said. Or until I was legally divorced. Marcus's mouth opened slightly, then closed. Ariel watched his face, reading the shift in his eyes as the entire story rewrote itself inside his head. I didn't tell you, she said. Because I wanted to know what you loved. Marcus's breath hitched. I wanted to know if you loved me, she continued. Or if you loved what you thought you could extract from me if you ever found out. Marcus swallowed. That's why I didn't fight, Ariel said. That's why I didn't hire a lawyer. That's why I signed fast. She leaned in, just enough for him to smell her perfume. Clean, expensive, not desperate. I wasn't surrendering, she said quietly. I was unlocking. Marcus's hands went cold. His stomach dropped as if the ground beneath him had shifted. He looked past her at the jet again. It wasn't a flex. It was a statement of scale. You're lying, he managed, but it sounded weak even to him. Ariel's expression didn't change. I don't need to lie, she said. Not anymore. Behind her, one of the security men glanced at his watch. Another scanned the perimeter like time itself was an asset. Ariel turned slightly, extending her hand in a graceful arc toward the northern parcel. This land is mine, she said, and your runway extension depends on it. Marcus's throat tightened. So what? This is revenge. Ariel looked at him as if the word was childish. This is business, she said. Revenge is loud. Marcus felt fury rise, desperate and hot. You can't block federal aviation development, he snapped. You can't just hold a project hostage because you're bitter. Ariel's gaze stayed steady. I'm not bitter, she said. I'm precise. Marcus stepped forward again, trying to reclaim dominance through proximity. Ariel, he said, forcing a smoother tone, like he could charm a contract into folding. Listen, we were married. We had good years. We can talk like adults. Ariel's eyes softened for a fraction of a second, not with affection, but with something colder, understanding. We had years, she said. You had ownership. Marcus flinched. Ariel turned her body slightly, angling away from him, signaling the conversation was already ending. If you want access, she said, you can submit an offer through my legal team. Marcus blinked. Your legal team? Ariel didn't answer directly. She simply nodded toward one of the SUVs. The door opened without a sound. A woman stepped out, mid-30s, sharply dressed, hair pulled back tight, tablet in hand. Her posture screamed corporate authority. She didn't look like an assistant. She looked like the person who tells assistants what to do. She approached Ariel and spoke quietly. Ariel listened without reacting. Marcus stared, anger curling into panic. He was used to Ariel being alone, used to her being unguarded. This wasn't the same woman who had walked out of his kitchen with nothing. This woman had infrastructure. Ariel turned back to him one last time. You should move your equipment off my boundary line, she said. Some of it is sitting 2 feet inside the parcel. Marcus's jaw tightened. This is ridiculous. Ariel's voice stayed calm. I have a meeting in Los Angeles tonight, she said, and I prefer my takeoffs uninterrupted. She put her sunglasses back on. For a moment, Marcus saw himself reflected in them, small, rigid, standing in dust beside unfinished steel. Then she walked away. Not fast, not dramatic, just certain. Marcus watched her climb the stairs of the jet like she was ascending into a world he'd never been invited into. The engines began to hum again, deep and controlled. The jet turned slightly on the strip, his missing strip, and rolled forward. Marcus stood frozen as the aircraft accelerated. The wind kicked sand into his shoes. The jet lifted smoothly, banking away into the bright desert sky like it was leaving behind something irrelevant. And Marcus realized something that made his skin go cold. Ariel didn't come to threaten him. She came to show him that she didn't have to. That night in Scottsdale, Marcus sat in a glass-walled condo overlooking the city's scattered lights. The place was expensive, modern, sterile. He'd chosen it because he liked the way it made him feel elevated. Tonight it felt like a fish tank. Sloane Brooks paced across the polished floor, champagne flute in hand, her silk robe dragging lightly behind her like impatience. Sloane was Marcus's new woman, sharp, ambitious, glamorous in a way that photographed well. She'd been at his side the moment Ariel left, sliding into the space with ease like she'd been measuring it for months. She stopped pacing and turned toward him. Tell me again, she said slowly, how your ex-wife landed a private jet on your runway. It's not my runway, Marcus snapped. It's a parcel adjacent to my project. Sloane stared. So, your project depends on it. Marcus didn't answer. Sloane's eyes narrowed. Marcus. He exhaled hard and rubbed his temples. She bought it through a shell company, he said. Silent Ridge. Sloane's voice sharpened. And why didn't you buy it first? I tried, Marcus snapped. They played games. Sloane let out a short laugh, not amused. So your empire is being blocked by someone who played games better than you. Marcus glared. She had hidden money. Sloane's expression shifted, interest cutting through annoyance. Hidden how? Marcus hesitated. Saying it out loud made it real. Trust clause, he muttered. Divorce unlocked it. Sloane's mouth parted slightly. Then she laughed, a sound that wasn't joy. It was disbelief wrapped in hunger. So you freed her, she said. You signed the key into her hand. Marcus's eyes hardened. I didn't know. Sloane stepped closer, lowering her voice like she was sharing strategy. Then we take it, she said. Marcus frowned. Take what? Sloane's eyes glittered. We sue. We claim marital rights. We go after the trust. We go after the land. We go after the jet. Marcus stared at her, seeing something familiar and ugly in her expression. The same hunger that lived in him, reflected back. It's not that simple, he said. Sloane's tone sharpened. Everything is simple when you have power. Marcus's jaw clenched. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Marcus didn't move at first. It was late. Nobody came here without permission. Sloane set her glass down slowly. Marcus stood, walked to the door, and opened it. A man stood there in a tailored suit that looked expensive but worn by someone who lived under pressure. He carried a briefcase and the kind of tired eyes that had seen too many people try to cheat reality. Marcus's attorney, Calvin Reese. Calvin stepped inside and shut the door behind him. Marcus didn't offer him a drink. Calvin didn't ask. "I read about the jet," Calvin said quietly. Marcus's nostrils flared. "Then you know why you're here." Calvin opened the briefcase and pulled out a file thicker than Marcus wanted to see. "I pulled the trust documents," Calvin said. "And before you say it, yes, it's real." Marcus's stomach tightened. Calvin laid the documents on the table like a verdict. "The trust was structured so the assets weren't hers while you were married," Calvin said. "Legally, she had nothing." Marcus's jaw clenched. "So she lied in the divorce." Calvin shook his head once. "No," he said. "She didn't have to." Marcus stared at him. Calvin pointed to a paragraph. "Her access triggers a divorce," he said. The second the judge's signature hit, the principal transferred. During proceedings, she was, on paper, empty. Marcus felt something twist inside him. "So I can't sue." Calvin's voice was flat. "You can sue. You won't win." Sloane leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "There has to be a loophole." Calvin looked at her, then back at Marcus. "There is one path," he said. "But it isn't legal warfare." Marcus's eyes sharpened. "Then what?" Calvin's voice lowered. "Pressure," he said. "Permits. Zoning. Environmental reviews. Noise ordinances. You've donated to county campaigns. You have relationships." Marcus's mouth tightened. The word relationships tasted like leverage. Calvin continued. "If her land becomes too expensive to develop," he said, "she might sell." Marcus stared at the papers, then lifted his eyes slowly. Sloane watched him carefully. A slow smile started to form at the corner of Marcus's mouth, small, controlled, cruel in a way that didn't need to raise its voice. "Okay," Marcus said quietly. Sloane's eyes widened slightly. "Yes." Marcus stood and walked toward the window, looking out over Scottsdale's lights as if the city belonged to him again. "She thinks she can land a jet and rewrite the world," Marcus said. "She thinks money makes her untouchable." He turned back, eyes hard. "I built my life on making systems bend," he said. "She doesn't know what I know." Calvin hesitated. "Marcus, don't underestimate her." Marcus's smile didn't move. "I already did once," he said. "That won't happen again." Sloane stepped closer and slipped her hand onto his arm, nails light against his sleeve. "So we bury her in red tape," she whispered. Marcus nodded slowly. "Not just red tape," he said. "Noise, delays, investigations. Make her look reckless. Make her look dangerous. Make investors nervous." Calvin watched him, uneasy. Marcus's eyes stayed fixed on the skyline. "And when she's suffocating," Marcus said softly, "she'll come to me." Sloane smiled. "And then?" Marcus's voice dropped even lower. "Then she'll remember why she should have been afraid to be quiet around me." Calvin shifted. "I'll draft the first filings." Marcus nodded once. As Calvin gathered his briefcase, Marcus pulled out his phone. Not his main line. A second phone. A burner. Sloane watched it appear with curiosity. Marcus stared at the screen for a long moment, thumb hovering, as if pressing the contact would cross a line he couldn't uncross. Sloane tilted her head. "Who's that?" Marcus didn't answer. He SC'd to a contact saved under one word. "Wolf." He pressed call. The dial tone sounded louder than it should have in the quiet condo. Sloane's smile faded, replaced by interest sharpened into something darker. Marcus listened. A voice finally answered, low, rough, unimpressed. "Yeah." Marcus's eyes stayed on the city lights. "I need a problem handled," he said quietly. There was a pause. Then the voice said, "Money talks." Marcus's jaw tightened. I don't have time for talking, Marcus said. Outside, Scottsdale's lights continued to glitter, indifferent and distant. Inside, the silence returned, different this time. Not Ariel's silence. Marcus's. The kind that wasn't calm. The kind that came right before something desperate. And somewhere out there, beyond the boundary lines and unfinished steel, Ariel Monroe was building something that didn't need him at all. Marcus just didn't know yet how far she had already anticipated this call. The first notice arrived on Ariel's desk on a Tuesday morning, slid between a zoning update from Maricopa County and a financing confirmation from a private equity group out of New York. It was thin, official-looking, unimpressive. She read it once, then placed it face down without reacting. Outside her temporary office, a glass-walled structure overlooking the northern parcel, the desert sun climbed higher, reflecting off the aluminum fuselage of her jet parked at the edge of the strip. Workers moved methodically along the perimeter, installing lighting and security fencing with quiet efficiency. Everything was on schedule. The notice claimed a potential environmental review delay. Nothing unusual. By Wednesday, there were 3 more. Noise impact study, wildlife assessment, airspace safety reevaluation. Ariel read them all, filed them neatly, said nothing. Her chief operations officer, Isaiah Coleman, noticed. Isaiah had built logistics networks in cities where silence was never accidental. He stood across from her desk, tablet in hand, eyes narrowing as patterns formed. This isn't random, he said. Ariel looked up calmly. No. Someone's leaning on the county. Yes. Isaiah hesitated. Marcus. Ariel didn't answer immediately. She turned her chair slightly, looking through the glass at the strip of land separating her parcel from Marcus's stalled construction site. His steel beams hadn't moved in days. Equipment sat idle. Loans didn't like waiting. He's late, she said instead. Isaiah frowned. Late. He should have started this 2 weeks ago, Ariel replied. Which means he waited until he thought I was relaxed. Isaiah exhaled slowly. You want me to respond? Ariel shook her head. Not yet. She picked up her pen and signed a document approving the next phase of construction. Isaiah watched her carefully. You're not concerned. I'm entertained, she said. That afternoon, a glossy industry blog ran a piece questioning the viability of boutique private airfields in environmentally sensitive zones. The article didn't name her project directly, but the subtext was clear. By evening, 2 investors called asking for clarification. Ariel took both calls herself. She didn't defend. She didn't argue. She explained. By the end of the calls, both investors thanked her for the transparency and asked when they could visit the site. On Thursday, an inspector showed up unannounced. He wore an official badge and an apologetic smile. He walked slowly, clipboard in hand, asking questions that sounded rehearsed. Ariel answered politely, offered water, let him take photos. She didn't rush him. When he left, Isaiah leaned close. That one's compromised. Ariel nodded. I know. You want him replaced? Already done. Isaiah blinked. What? Ariel turned her laptop slightly so he could see the email timestamped 2 hours earlier. The inspector's supervisor had already been reassigned pending an internal review. The replacement would arrive Friday. Isaiah stared at her. You're not reacting, he said. You're moving ahead of him. Ariel capped her pen. That's what quiet people do. By the end of the week, Marcus Holloway was convinced his strategy was working. From his office overlooking downtown Phoenix, he watched reports pile up on his desk. Delays, complications, questions. His lawyer confirmed that Ariel's permits were under review. His contacts assured him the pressure would increase. She'll crack, Sloan said, lounging on his sofa, scrolling through her phone. Everyone cracks. Marcus smiled faintly. She always did, he said. That night, Marcus attended a private aviation mixer in Tempe. The room buzzed with money and ambition. He shook hands, smiled, dropped hints about expansion plans that no longer existed. He waited for someone to mention Ariel. No one did. Instead, he overheard something worse. She's not building an airstrip, a hedge fund manager said nearby. She's building a hub. Marcus's grip tightened on his glass. A what? A destination, the man continued. Private arrivals. Secure transfers. On-site hospitality. No TSA. No publicity. Marcus turned slowly. And it's already financed. Marcus's chest tightened. By the time he got home, his phone was buzzing. One missed call. Then another. Devon. Marcus answered on the third ring. She just took Horizon Logistics, Devon said, voice tight. Marcus froze. That was my meeting. They signed with her, Devon continued. 10-year agreement. Fixed rates. Marcus hung up without replying. His apartment felt smaller than it had that morning. Sloane watched his face change. What happened? Marcus didn't answer. He walked to the window, staring out at the city lights that suddenly looked less impressed with him. Across town, Ariel stood on the balcony of her temporary residence, wrapped in a light jacket as the desert cooled. Below her, black SUVs idled quietly. Security never slept. Her assistant stepped out behind her. The gala invitations are confirmed, she said. Governor, FAA Regional Director, 3 major logistics CEOs. Ariel nodded. And Marcus Holloway, the assistant asked. Ariel considered the question. He'll hear about it, she said. She turned back inside, closing the glass door softly. Behind her, the desert stretched wide and patient. Somewhere in the city, Marcus Holloway was beginning to understand that pressure only worked when the other person didn't already own the air. And Ariel Monroe had learned a long time ago how to breathe where others suffocated. The gala was designed to feel inevitable. By the time the invitations went out, the date had already circulated through private calendars, whispered across boardrooms, and encrypted chats where real decisions were made long before announcements ever followed. It wasn't marketed. It didn't need to be. The people who mattered understood what an invitation meant. Marcus Holloway was not on the list. He found out anyway. The first hint came when his phone stopped ringing. Not abruptly, gradually. The way oxygen thins at altitude, enough to breathe at first, then suddenly not enough at all. By noon, 2 scheduled meetings had been postponed. By mid-afternoon, a lender's office assistant sent a polite email asking to reschedule, pending internal review. The words were neutral. The meaning wasn't. Marcus sat alone in his office, staring at a glass wall that made him visible but irrelevant. His reflection looked intact, tailored suit, expensive watch, posture still trained for dominance. But something underneath had cracked. Sloane noticed it before he admitted it to himself. They're pulling away, she said flatly, standing near the desk, arms crossed. I can feel it. Marcus didn't respond. I heard about the gala, she continued. Everyone heard about the gala. Marcus's jaw tightened. It's a stunt, he said. A distraction. Sloane laughed softly, not amused. No, she said. It's a transfer. That word landed heavier than insult. Marcus stood abruptly, pacing. She can't host something like that without permits. Without clearance. Without. She already has them, Sloane cut in. And if she didn't, she wouldn't announce it. Marcus stopped pacing. You don't know that, he said. Sloane studied him, eyes sharp. Marcus, she said slowly. You taught me to recognize leverage. This isn't noise. This is gravity. Marcus's phone buzzed again. He snatched it up. A message from Devon. We have a problem. Marcus closed his eyes briefly before calling. What now? He snapped. The FAA regional director confirmed attendance, Devon said. At her event. Marcus's breath stalled. That doesn't make sense. It does if she already owns the compliance narrative, Devon replied. She's positioning herself as inevitable. Marcus hung up without responding. Across the desert, Ariel Monroe stood inside a hangar that didn't smell like ambition. It smelled like completion. The lighting was soft and deliberate, designed to flatter metal and shadow equally. The floor was polished concrete, immaculate. Security moved quietly along the perimeter, invisible unless you knew what to look for. Isaiah walked beside her, reviewing the final checklist. Media placement is controlled, he said. No open press. Invitation-only coverage. Everything routed through private channels. Ariel nodded. And Marcus? Isaiah asked carefully. Ariel didn't stop walking. He'll come, she said. Isaiah frowned slightly. He wasn't invited. I know. That evening, the guests arrived in waves. Black sedans. Private helicopters. A few discreet jets touching down with almost ceremonial restraint. No chaos. No spectacle. Just precision. Inside, conversations flowed easily. Deals were discussed without urgency. The kind of environment where confidence didn't need to announce itself. Marcus arrived late. He stood at the edge of the hangar entrance, suit immaculate, expression carefully neutral. He had forced his way past the first layer of security using a name that still carried weight, just enough to test whether it still worked. It did. Barely. Inside, he felt it immediately. The shift. People didn't turn toward him. They turned past him. Conversations didn't stop. They rerouted. He scanned the room. And then he saw her. Ariel stood near the center of the hangar, not elevated, not isolated, just present. She wore a dark tailored dress, elegant, understated, unmistakably intentional. No jewelry that begged attention. No color that needed explanation. She wasn't performing. She was hosting. Marcus moved through the crowd, recalibrating his smile with each step. He recognized faces, investors who once returned his calls immediately, executives who used to mirror his posture unconsciously when he spoke. Now they nodded politely, briefly, then turned away. Marcus felt heat creep up his neck. He reached her side just as a quiet ripple of attention passed through the room. Ariel had begun speaking. Not loudly, not formally, just enough to be heard. I appreciate all of you making time, she said. I know schedules are tight when momentum is real. A few smiles flickered. She continued. This isn't a launch, she said. It's a confirmation. Marcus felt something sink in his chest. This facility exists because the industry has been pretending privacy and efficiency are luxuries, Ariel said. They're not. They're infrastructure. Heads nodded. She gestured lightly toward the runway visible through the open hangar doors. Tomorrow morning, the first long-haul arrivals will land here, she said. Not as guests, as partners. Marcus couldn't stop himself. You don't have clearance for that, he said, stepping forward. The room stilled, not out of shock, but recognition. Ariel turned to face him. Her expression didn't change. Yes, she said calmly. I do. Marcus laughed once. Too sharp. You're bluffing. Ariel glanced toward a man standing near the edge of the group. He stepped forward, calm, authoritative, unmistakably federal. The clearance is approved, the man said evenly. As of this afternoon. Marcus stared. The man nodded politely and stepped back. Ariel's attention returned to Marcus. You're standing in my hangar, she said, and interrupting my guests. Marcus's face tightened. You did this on purpose. Yes, Ariel said, but not to hurt you. That stung more than anger. You think this ends me? Marcus demanded. You think one event rewrites everything? Ariel studied him, not with triumph, but with something colder. No, she said. This just makes it visible. She turned back to her guests. Enjoy the evening, she said softly. The room resumed its rhythm instantly. Marcus stood alone, invisible. For the first time in his career, the silence wasn't strategic. It was complete. And somewhere beneath the polished floor and controlled lighting, Marcus Holloway realized something irreversible had already happened. The industry hadn't chosen Ariel because she was loud. They had chosen her because she was done. And Marcus was still trying to prove he mattered. If you enjoy the story and are interested in the next part of this story, let us know in the comments and we will make it available on the channel, but make sure you are subscribed to the channel so you can get notified.